Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this webcast, COVID-19 Best Practices, Communication, Business Development, and Networking from Home. I'm Bethany Evans with the EHS Support, and I'm an ACG Pittsburgh Future Corporate Leaders Board member. First, I would like to thank the ACG Pittsburgh annual sponsors. We wouldn't be here today without their generosity, and especially during this difficult year, we're very grateful. If you're interested in becoming a sponsor, please let me know or reach out to Micah Whitfield. Thank our sponsors for all of their support. A new benefit of sponsorship is that anyone from your firm can receive a complimentary virtual program access to regular events. There's also a free membership for any individual under the age of 40 that comes with your sponsorship. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to me or Micah. Before our program begins, I would like to recognize our FCL member spotlight for November. Each month, the FCL highlights a member of the ACG Pittsburgh community, and I would like to take a few minutes today to spotlight Megan Trexler. Megan is Senior Manager of Audit and Assurance Services at Grossman Yannick Ford. Megan epitomizes the contemporary woman in the workplace and sets an example, an excellent example for other future leaders. She's a highly respected senior manager and focuses her efforts on becoming Grossman, Yannick & Ford's second female partner. In addition to making significant contributions to the GYF firm and her family, Megan serves on several nonprofit boards, lending her talent and her energy. She's very active in her church as well. Megan is a valued mentor for younger accountants at GYF. She provides formal coaching to 3 professionals and informally advises many others as well. She also serves as a business mentor through her volunteer work at Pittsburgh Fellows. Megan is a wife and mother to 2 young boys and prioritizes family time as she is actively involved with her kids' school and sports activities. With limited options for activities during the pandemic, Megan and her family have toured all 120 installations listed in the Pittsburgh Art in Public Places, the Downtown Walking Tour Guidebook, which makes me want to check that out. If any of you would like to nominate someone to be featured in the ACG FCL Spotlight, the link to the nomination form will be emailed following this program. So thanks, Megan, and great job. We're happy to have you among us. So moving on to today's event, our webcast today features Bill Talerico, founder of the Talerico Group. Bill has held various sales and sales leadership roles in his 20-year career in the financial and technology industries. He and his team have a passion for helping people develop to realize their full potential in leadership roles, and is going to give us tips in how to do this in this fun new environment we're all embarking on. So if you have any questions during the event, please use the Zoom Q&A function and send it to him, or click raise your hand and we'll enable your audio so that you can weigh in. So I will, with that, hand it over to Bill.
Well, thank you, Bethany, and thank you for everybody for being here. I know she said something to the effect of in our new times, and I'm glad she said that. It's interesting that some people refer to this as our new normal, and I struggle to do that because there's very little about what we are experiencing currently that is normal. So I know it's new, I just don't think it's normal. So today we're going to talk a little bit about how we communicate with folks during these times, just not just externally, but how we do that somewhat internally as well, because most of us are remote. Ironically, today is my first day working remote since the pandemic started on March 13th. I've been in my office every day during this time, and then Monday, my son was exposed to somebody with COVID at his school. I was talking to my physician the other day after follow up from a procedure I had, and told him that, and told him about some of the symptoms I've been experiencing, which I think are seasonal allergies. And he said, "Yeah, I think I'm going to want you to get a COVID test and quarantine." So that happened yesterday. I went and had a rapid test. It came back negative, so I think most of you are safe. We shouldn't have any COVID fly through the screen and get you. But I am quarantining until Monday, until the send out lab test comes back. So as we go through our conversation today, I think there's about 30 of us who are participating, so it's not a huge panel or a huge participation, which means if you have questions, don't be afraid to share them. Shoot them through the chat. Raise your hand. If I don't get to you because I'm not attentive to the chat or attentive to the raising the hand, feel free to come off mute and yell something out. But I'd rather deal with that question in the moment than try to save them all to the end, okay? So as we talk about communication, and I hope that my screen is sharing, as we talk about communication, we're really talking about how we get to know somebody. And it's very rare for us to be able to show up and just say, okay, here I am, accept me, and get to know me. I think that getting to know someone has to be intentional. And for our part, there's two things we need to do. We need to be able to ask great questions. And then in turn, we need to actually listen to the answers we get and do something meaningful with them, right? Versus just move along. None of us like being around those folks that ask us a question and you could tell they're not really listening to our response. Whoops, my screen's going crazy on me here. You can tell they're really not listening to our response. They're just waiting for there to be a break in the action for us to breathe so they can start talking again themselves. And those aren't very pleasant conversations. So how do we're going to talk a little bit about that active listening today. How do we let people know we're engaged and make it meaningful when we do ask great questions? But we believe that the foundation of business development culture and a client satisfaction culture is this effective communication. And the two pillars of effective communication are those great questions and active listening. And I think there's greater relevance for this now than ever before, because more now than ever, COVID is all about effective communication. All of us, it's funny, we're all working remote and it seems like things are, I don't want to say slowing down or they're down or whatever, but no one's ever been busier, right? I mean, most of us are busier than we've ever been, yet we're searching for connection because we're so isolated. And I think more than ever, people are prepared for that. People are open to that connection. They're open to, there's a greater willingness to connect now than we've seen in the past. So, that's a good thing for us. There's benefit to that. And, as we talk about COVID connection right now, it's, we need to be thinking about what are the types of questions we need to be asking, and then what should we be listening for? Because we have a very unique opportunity now to communicate with great impact. And, I think that, never is it okay to communicate with low impact, but more than ever, with this willingness, this desire for connectedness, and this desire for, dealing with people who are in stressful situations, and we're all in stressful situations. We had an experience this morning where we like to send out Thanksgiving cards to our clients. We do Thanksgiving cards instead of Christmas cards. And we ordered them and they were supposed to be in, and we were supposed to have them done by now and mailed out. Well, there was a couple day delay in us getting the cards. So they came yesterday and everybody started signing them, and I signed them last night. And my wife, who's in charge of the project, she signed them and she started counting the cards, and they sent us 50 less cards than we ordered. So we started calling this morning, trying to get in touch with the people that created the cards and everything. It took 3.5 hours and we still didn't have clear communication. And by the time I got the supervisor on the phone, he started going to the, well, with COVID, we're dealing with, and I was like, whoa, stop. I'm like, I don't care. I don't want to hear because of COVID, we're doing this. Nobody does, right? We're all going through COVID. Everybody has challenges to the business. Everybody's experienced consequences, many of them unfortunate because of COVID. So we can't lead with because of COVID. No, right? We just have to own that. So, now is an opportunity for us to communicate with great impact because there's some sensitivity around it. Our approach to Talerico Group that we've taken with our clients is we believe that we are in a definite serve, not sell environment, right? So we believe that more than ever, our communication right now, our connectedness with others right now needs to be around how we serve them better, not just how we get them to do something for us. Our needs can't be first and foremost. I think we need to be in an environment, or we are in an environment, where we need to deliver true service, come to this with a servant's heart into these communications, because everybody's hurting. As I shared with Schneider Downs recently, one of my clients, that many of you, with the roles you have, and both internally and externally, how you the impact you have on others' lives, you have the ability to connect with people and connect them to solutions. As I shared with Schneider Downs, it's about helping our clients, it's about helping our prospects find great solutions, not just tax answers, right? So how do we get people to the solutions they're looking for? I had a conversation with a client earlier this morning who he leads the HR group for a very large organization. I think they do about 4 billion a year in revenue. And he told me, he said, "I think we're done with offices. I'm not sure we're going to ever call our offices again. And I'm not sure anybody's going to have defined workspaces. I combined spaces and stations there. That was interesting." He said, "But we're going to have more collaboration centers." And so we're already seeing this new thinking taking shape. And he asked me, he said, "What experience do you have with this, and how can you help us rethink our collaboration centers?" And I thought that, I have no idea what I would do with that, right? That's not exactly something we specialize in, but there's somebody who I care about who's looking for answers and looking for help. So we better figure that out. We better bring our servant's heart to that, and not just be focused on what services us right now. So some of the questions we need to, think about now is that are more timely and more appropriate than in times past are those personal questions about how they're doing, how they're managing through this, how their family's doing through this. I just today had a couple conversations asking people about how Thanksgiving is going to be impacted because of this, and uh, that's okay. Those topics aren't taboo. You know why? Because we're all dealing with it. It's nothing unique, right? I mean, my in-laws, my father-in-law is 82 and my mother-in-law is 78. For the first time since Susie and I have been married, we're not going to be with them on Thanksgiving because they're not coming out, right? They don't feel comfortable coming up for Thanksgiving, and they don't feel comfortable having us there for Thanksgiving. So, we ordered them takeout for next week. And so I don't know what's going to happen with us. I think it might be just the four of us and the 16-pound turkey we bought. So we'll have plenty of leftovers if anybody's looking for De Silva. I think you're on the call. If you need us to deliver some turkey to you, we'll be happy to. But, it's okay to talk about these things that everybody's going through, that we don't have to pretend are taboo. Get connected, be real with people, and ask them some personal questions about how they're managing through this. And you remember, if we ask generic questions, we're going to get generic answers. And when you think about questions, some of us, and I'm guessing many of you who aren't really salespeople, questions can be intimidating for you, because most of us are raised to be very polite and very kind, and we don't want to intrude in somebody's personal space. But think of them more as invitations to conversation. And when we can invite people into conversation with us, it's not quite as intimidating as it is thinking about asking them personal questions. Just extend these invitations to conversation. And I think more than ever, people are willing to engage in those conversations, because again, we're all looking for that connectedness. And what are we listening for? When we extend these great invitations to conversation, what is it that we should be listening for coming back from the other? I think we're listening for some emotion, right? We're listening for uh, truly listening for emotion, and not just the words. Or somebody goes, "Yeah, I'm fine," right? Don't be afraid to say, "Really?" and give them an opportunity to expand and share, because that's where you build great relationship, right? When you can connect with somebody emotionally, we can build great relationship. And if you're not comfortable with emotions, and you're not somebody who typically likes to be open and go deep in those relationships, now might be a time where you need to, because I think we were built for community as human beings, and that's one thing that many of us are lacking right now is that community, that connectedness in the community. So be in the moment and let the conversation evolve organically. Don't feel like we have to rush through our agenda to just get to an endpoint. If the conversation doesn't go where we wanted and we run out of time, well, that's okay. If we have 30 minutes scheduled with somebody and we're trying to solve something, and we spend 27 of those minutes talking about the impact of homeschooling on them, or the impact of on their family of this virus, and we run out of time and we didn't cover any of the business things we wanted to uncover, that's okay. Use those last 3 minutes to say, hey, I know we still have to get to whatever and talk about this. What's your calendar look like the rest of the week, and can we put another 30 minutes or 60 minutes on the calendar together, and get that scheduled and get it set up? Because remember, it's more than rushing through the agenda. It's about connecting with people. So, and Ian and Bethany, just as a heads up, my chat, I had to move it off the screen so I could see the slides. I'm working with one monitor today. So if there's something in chat, can you guys let me know? And then for those who might submit a question via chat, just come off of mute and yell, hey, Bill, and we'll pause and let you deal with that, okay? This doesn't have to be as formal as some things. You'll see a slide in a few moments about the lack of formality that I think we're seeing in these conversations today. But remember, when we communicate with others, it's not just about what we say. When we talk about the impact of our communication, we like to think of it in three ways. And there was a study done at Harvard in the business school a few years back that said the impact of our communication is made up of three components, right? It's our words, our tone, and our body language. And our words only account for 7% of the impact of our communication. Our tone accounts for 38% of the impact of our communication. And our body language is 55. So what does that mean to us, right? When 100% of when 93% of our communication is made up with things other than words, and so much of our communication these days is email, text, Slack message, Teams message, whatever, we're not having as great of an impact on the communication as we can. And we need to be open and mindful of how we communicate, because the written word, no matter how good you are with it, doesn't have as much impact as picking up the telephone or jumping into a video meeting. And when we're on video meetings, please don't rely just on the having your camera off and using it as more of a conference dial-in. I think back on March 13th, when we started meetings, we kind of looked like Hulk Hogan up top with the tux on. And now I think more and more people are more relaxed, which is a natural environment, right? And just being who you are. I know that throughout this pandemic, I actually I've seen a client's toilet on one of our Teams calls. And, I was talking to her, and her husband came walking in through the room carrying a toilet. And I said, what the hell's going on there? And she said, oh, he's losing his mind. He's home, and we have this bathroom that he's been wanting to redo. And he looked over and he yelled, hey, how you doing? And he's carrying a toilet through the living room. We're all dealing with it, right? Like, my dog just walked in, and I can't believe he didn't flip out because there was somebody walking down the street, and normally that drives him nuts. My son's walking around the house because he's doing homeschool today. It's chaos, right? I mean, we're all living in chaos. And you think about the beauty of it is every day we're going into our coworkers and our prospects and our clients' homes. When do you ever get a chance to do that? Right? We're being invited into people's homes every day, and inviting people into our homes. And when we think about the impact that we want to have on building intimacy, impact, communicating with impact, right? Turn the camera on. Let them see you. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. Again, we're all in this together. We don't have to rely on the formality of, making sure the backdrop is perfect and everything. We had a client call the other day with a large team, and one of the participants was sitting in her kitchen, and where she takes her calls from, the refrigerator's directly behind her. So throughout the day, throughout the meeting, you saw her kids coming by, grabbing milk, doing this, doing that. We're invited into people's homes, and I made a comment about all the magnets on her fridge, and I said, those are obviously all the things you're proud of, and you want people to know about. And her manager said, if you really want to know about her, should turn around and open that fridge for us so we can see what's on the inside, which she did. So, how often do you get to go into your coworkers' refrigerators? Be open. Make this a good thing for us building intimacy, and not so much of how do I block it all out and keep my camera off. There's an incredible ability to create intimacy and create impact by having our cameras on versus just voice on. Okay. And when we think about the internal communications we're dealing with, there's an incredible amount of information coming our way. And we need to be mindful of how we share this information with our colleagues. I don't think there's a perfect way to manage this. It's something I struggle with, actually, because this velocity of information that is flying about. I struggle with it, and I had to learn from somebody who I consider to be a master communicator, and I think we all can learn from this person who I think was a master communicator, and he happens to be one of my heroes. I think that he's done an incredible service to our country. He's actually my cousin. His name's Rocky Cheka. He's the guy who's flying the helicopter in this picture. He spent 6 years as part of Marine One after serving 3 tours in Iraq. And when Rocky was at the end of his time as part of Marine One, he was able to bring family members down to Quantico so that we can all tour the Marine One hangar and the helicopters. This is back when they were still flying these helicopters, where now they fly the Osprey, which is actually able to convert from a plane to a helicopter. But Rocky was able to have us come down to DC and visit with him and visit Quantico. And I had an opportunity to sit in Marine One. I actually sat in the president's seat in Marine One. Incredible experience. And in the weeks leading up to our trip, Rocky sent out this email to us and another set of cousins who were going to be there the same weekend. And he detailed all the information we needed about getting there, and detailed all the information about the day of our trip. And he detailed all the information about our drive from the hotel down to Quantico, and then what we needed to do upon entry to the White House, and how we had to be dressed. Because part of the tour was also us going into the West Wing of the White House, and how we had to be dressed for going into the White House. And it was just incredible. And I replied to him, I was like, hey, Rock, this is like one of the greatest emails I've ever received. Where'd you learn how to communicate like this? And he replied to me and said, Bill, 3 times a day I stop and ask myself, what new information do I have? Who do I need to share it with? And how should I communicate it? Now, you and I aren't planning presidential missions to foreign lands or to places across the United States, but we still have a great velocity of information coming our way. We don't see the velocity of information maybe that they do as part of HMX1, but it doesn't mean to those that need to hear that information it's any less important. So I would ask you, throughout these days when we're living in the chaos of home, living in the chaos of being remote, of not being able to walk down the hall and share something with a colleague that we would otherwise in passing, how do we pause throughout the day and ask ourselves, what new information do I have? Who do I need to share it with? And what's the best way to communicate it? Is it picking up the phone? Is it able to be shared via Slack? I don't know. But how often should you be doing that? Is it once a day? Is it at the end of the morning and maybe at the end of the day? It can really free you from dropping balls and dropping information that otherwise can help someone do their job more effectively. And it was a great lesson I took from Rocky. So, when we think of, and by the way, we're at a point is before we transition. Does anybody have any questions regarding this or any of the things we've gone through? If so, just come off mute and shout them out, please. Something in chat. It says, please raise your, okay. All right, so nobody has anything? If you do, feel free to be bold, because if you're thinking of something, either how it applies to your day or a question you might have, I guarantee you at least 3 or 4 others are thinking of it too. So when you ask that question, they're gonna look up to you as like the leader. So feel free to jump in. All right, when we talk about good questions, great transition, right? When we talk about good questions, it's important for us to remember we control encounters by the questions we ask and not the answers we give. And too often when we're communicating with people, if they're only asking us questions, we're reacting. We're not able to drive things where they need to go for people's benefit. We're not able to drive conversations in a productive path for both them and for us. So think about how good questions can help us uncover the real truth. You know, too often somebody might ask us a question that we start to answer, and it's the polite question. It's not the question they really meant to ask. I always like to think that the first question is not the real question, right? So don't be afraid to be brave one question at a time and start asking confirming and clarifying questions of people when they're asking those questions. We like to say a great question is never a wrong answer, right? So when people are asking us questions, how do we ask them and say, when you say blank, what do you mean by that? Or you said this, and that can mean a couple different things to us. How do you mean that? Or when they ask you a question about something, it's okay to say, sounds like you have experience with the law. You know, I'll never forget one of my clients in the financial services industry brought me a question one day, and he's like, hey, I had this prospect ask me what my thoughts are in index funds. And I told them how they're important important part of a balanced portfolio and do. And he went down this very technical path. And he said, what was the right answer there? I said, well, I think the right answer there was probably another question. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, if somebody asks you your belief or your thoughts on index funds, I think the only thing you really need to share with them is, sounds like you have some experience with index funds, ... and just let that hang. I said, because they'll fill in the blanks for you. They'll tell you, oh, yeah, I use index funds and I don't like them because, why should I be paying you if we're just going to index against the market? Or I love index funds because they give you some security and let me participate in, the broad market without having to be perfect on my picks. Why go down the path of starting to share information with somebody if we don't know why they're asking us the question or how they feel about what they've asked us? So it's okay to share some of that information with folks in a very open way and ask another question, okay? And we think about questions, pretty basic stuff here. We got 2 types, right? The closed and the open. Closed questions lead to short answers. They resemble an interrogation. We want to have as few of those as possible. Great open-ended questions, invitations to conversation. They're more about sharing vision, needs, wants, and this is a good conversation versus just boom, boom, boom. So some of our favorite open-ended questions don't really sound like questions. They are, tell me about, help me understand, walk me through, what else, right? So tell me about how you're managing through this. Excuse me. Walk me through how you guys are working currently and how you're sharing, how you're managing people being in and out of the office. And, help me understand whatever. And then how do you ask somebody at the end, what else? Now let's think about what else is important to them. We have a question from Andrew. It says, have you found effective ways to ask those questions via email? In person, it's pretty simple to do. I'm guessing that's Andrew De Silva. So Andrew, if so, good to hear from you. Also, you say it's simple to ask them in person. I don't know if it is simple for everybody. I think it might come more simply for you than it does for most. But the way to ask those in email, I think, is very difficult to do, and it's artful, right? So the first is to put that into an email, excuse me, with maybe some bullet points and maybe some experience, sharing some of your experiences. So something you could share is how you're dealing with this. I know we're struggling with blah, 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 or I know we've had some success with blah, blah, blah. Out of curiosity, how are you guys managing through this? And I think it's important to then push for those conversations, because more now than ever, we should be trying to get in front of people and ask some different questions and try to and Andrew, I'm kind of laughing, by the way, the extra message you just sent me that says that's my COVID cough. Thanks a lot, buddy. But yeah, I think that as you go through those, through the written word, it's tough for us to get to where we want to be, and we end up sending 6, 7, 8 emails back and forth that have very direct sharing and don't have the elaboration. We want to try to fight for those phone calls as much as we can, or the Zoom meetings as much as we can, so that we can get into that better sharing. Okay. So thanks for sharing that question with us. Hopefully that helps. And we'll continue down our path here of our style, and this, God,
Hey,
I'm
Bill.
sorry.
It's Patrick. How are you?
Hey, Patrick. Hey, buddy, how are you?
Good. Hey, I just had a question, just thinking about your 3 questions there, along with communication and concept of intimacy and everything else. Because of COVID, do you think that people have an opportunity to form maybe more intimate relationships, or what's your thoughts on that? Because we're all in this kind of common space, and as you mentioned, whether it be seeing people at home or in different ways, are you finding or are you hearing from others that they're maybe connecting in a more intimate fashion than they may have historically?
I think absolutely. This is the greatest. I mean, that's one of the gifts of this, right? I had a client share with me today an email. He includes me on his all team emails to his team, and they're based in New York, and they're hurting more than anybody, right? I mean, Manhattan's dead, and their business is in the home care business, so they work with people that are sick and suffering, that have some needs, either because of minor infirmities or permanent 24-hour-a-day care. And he sent me a note out to his team today talking about an exercise they went through this as a leadership team. And they shared something they're grateful for personally because of COVID, and something they're grateful for professionally because of COVID. Which, first, think about that leadership style, right? How beautiful that is, that he brought his leadership team together to find things they're grateful for because of COVID versus finding things that are wrong because of COVID. And I think one of the things that they shared on there, virtually every person shared that one of the things they're grateful for personally is the increased intimacy of the family. How they've been able to spend greater time with their young children, or how those who are empty nesters and have kids that would be off at college have been able to spend time with their college-age children. So that's a gift. I think that, you think of your days, you think of my days. In the past, how many times would somebody be willing to send you an email with a quick answer that now they say, hey, let's schedule a meeting, let's schedule some time to talk through this on Monday. And when people are scheduling time, I don't know about your experience, but mine is virtually every meeting I have now is either via Zoom or Microsoft Teams, where in the past people would schedule calls, right? And I think everybody's open to that connectedness to build these deeper relationships. But how do we lead, and how do we play a part in that? Part of that, I think, is turning our camera on. I mean, if we're scheduling Zoom meetings and we just treat it like a conference call and we don't turn the camera on, so somebody can see us vulnerable, so somebody could see us how we are in our home. Here I'm sitting in my dining room today, so there's wine glasses. There's a nativity set that we leave up all year long because we just like it too much to put it away. I mean, these are little insights to who we are. And sharing that with somebody with my camera on is a lost opportunity if I have the camera off and I'm just talking. Hey, my dog says hello to everybody, by the way. So, that's I think that we are seeing greater relationships being established, because no matter what our industry, no matter where we're at, we all have a common bond right now, and that is chaos, right? It's the chaos of COVID that says we don't know what tomorrow brings. You know, my kids are in a school where they're back to school 5 days a week. They go to Seton LaSalle, and that's great. Except today, when my daughter went into her physics class, because they have to stay home because of this quarantining we're doing until we get test results back. You know, my daughter was able to sit at the table with us today and show us her physics class taking place. Well, there's 12 kids in her physics class, and they had 7 of them in their lab today. So, you know, the chaos is our kids might be in school, but we don't know what tomorrow brings. And that's something we all share. So yeah, Patrick, I think that, you know, the vulnerability of the human condition that we're experiencing right now makes us all more willing to connect and
Sure.
gives us an opportunity to create greater intimacy with these calls if we embrace them for what they are.
Sure. Well, thanks, Bill. Great insight.
Thank you. Hopefully that wasn't a tangent, and I didn't mean to take you on a frolic and detour there. So hopefully that addressed your question. You know, remember that I mentioned earlier that it takes multiple questions sometimes for us to get to the truth. So when people are asking us questions, never so we know what they mean. By initial question, I like to strive more for some clarity by asking, confirming, and clarifying questions. You know, that first question I mentioned earlier is never the real question. Let's give people more of an opportunity to elaborate, amplify, clarify, so that we can understand what they truly need. And I don't know if you guys remember the Staples no button. Remember when they had that great ad where, you know, Staples would hit the button that said no? If I had a button I could put on every desk in America, it would be ask questions, right? Ask questions, because that becomes such a great friend for us as a leader, just as a communicator. How do we ask better questions to gain better insights, so that we know what's important to somebody? And some good discovery questions if you are working with people that are in if you're in any type of business development or client facing space. Think about how we ask questions to the effect of, you know, what's frustrated with you in the past when working with providers, or what are your expectations of a good partner? What are your expectations of a good partner? And what are some of the, you know, think of some of the good ones that you've seen others use that you admire, or some of the ones that have been effective for you, but get ready with those and make those your go-to questions, right? Let's make those our go-to questions. And remember that clarifying questions don't necessarily have to be questions. They can be statements that, when we go back a few slides and remember the impact of our communication, 38% of which is tone driven. If we think about how we structure statements with a quizzical tone, we have the opportunity to turn anything into a question, right? Sounds like you have experience with blank. And we have to be brave to be able to ask those one question at a time, right? Be brave one question at a time, because the more we can flush out that confusion and we can get to the question that they really wanted to ask and not answer the question we think we heard, the better we're going to be in I think building some of that intimacy. Okay. So what do we think about that? I'm going to stop here for a minute because I was going fast and furious. I know we're running against the clock, and I wanted to try to share some of those insights with you, but more importantly, get to any questions you guys might have. And Anne, is there any situations that you're working on that you're experiencing with internal or external communications that we might all be able to learn from and through some discussion? If not, we'll jump back in and keep going. No thoughts, or
Hey,
no
Bill,
one
I
working?
actually have a question.
Sure. Yeah.
So I am the head of marketing for a asset-based lending firm, and we have 8 originators spread across the country. And I'm experiencing a lot of Zoom fatigue across the team, where they're having a hard time getting others to use the Zoom or the team. Do you have any suggestions on how to kind of refresh and restart be interested in engaging in the Zooms and the Microsoft Teams?
Sure. So when you say that Zoom fatigue, Jen, is that internally or is that are they
Both.
experiencing that externally?
Yeah, both. I think they're getting a little bit pushback from the outside, and then they're also kind of feeling that way. If others were more open to it externally, then they might kind of recharge themselves. But I'm noticing a lot of, the cameras and things being off. So I was curious if you had any suggestions.
Yeah, it's funny. I think internally, there's a lot of organizations we work with that have just said, hey, here's our policy. We're going to be camera on. We're just going to go camera on and we're going to lead by example that way internally. For me, I find that I never go into a meeting with camera off. So when I'm working with people outside of our organization and with our clients and I go camera on, you find that people will start to limp in that way a little more, right? And, just talk about saying, oh yeah, glad you're here. Where do I find you today? Are you at home? Or are you in the office? Using some of that small inquiry has people say, oh yeah, I'm at home. Here, I'll show you. I have a ball cap on today, but just a little bit of the prodding, leading with your camera on is, I think, the first step. And then, just prodding and asking somebody where they are, where I find you today, or things like that, externally tends to help. But it's really tough to get onto an external call and say, hey, Jen, my camera's on. Why isn't yours? I mean, you can't force that. Internally, you can a little more and just say, hey, as a commitment, we're going to make to each other, we're going to go camera on. We do a lot of 5 behaviors of a cohesive teamwork. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. But Patrick Lencioni wrote a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. It's a great exercise when you bring leadership teams together to do the 5 behaviors of a cohesive team. And in the trust session and in the conflict session, healthy conflict, one of the commitments they made to each other, this one team I work with, around establishing healthy conflict and open communication, was that they would always enter with cameras on any type of Zoom or Teams meeting. So, it's easier to manage that internally. It's tougher to manage that externally. But I find usually when you lead by example, by having it on, sometimes, there's a fair percentage of time that you can get people to follow.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for the question. All right. And Patrick or Bethany, what time did we want to end my piece by? Was it 1:45 or was it till 2?
Till 2.
Till 2. Okay. So if we don't have any other questions, I'll jump back into sharing my screen a little bit here. I just have to remember how to do that. Get into the Zoom app. So, and did we just have a chat coming? No. All right. So I'm going to share my screen again, gang. And we'll jump back into what are we listening for? So when we say that someone's a great listener, what attributes do they exhibit that really prove that they're a great listener? And it's not that we're saying they have a good hearing. We're saying they've proven to me they're a good listener because they exhibit active listening skills. And when we think about active listening, what we're really thinking through or thinking about is staying focused on what the other's saying to us and not jumping ahead to what we're going to say next. We've all been around the folks who they're just waiting for you to take a breath so they can start talking. That's not healthy to build a relationship. Remembering what the other person has to tell us is far more important than what we have to tell them, can keep us engaged in that moment. Because, so if we're asking great questions and people are willing to share that information with us, I think the most kind and respectful thing we can do is pay attention to it. So, are you an active listener? I would ask, do you prove to people that you're actually listening? Or are you someone who's jumping ahead and, just waiting for them to pause so you can make it about you and say, oh, I did that before too? Are you able to continue conversations and create flow, and create this flow that promotes sharing? If so, probably demonstrating some good active listening skills. or do you find yourself in conversations that typically have some of these awkward pauses and silence and not sure what's going on? Usually those awkward silences, those awkward pauses, they come from us trying to make things perfect. Okay? And I think one of the things that has enabled me to be a better conversationalist and be better at trying to create and promote and extend these conversations is just having a level of comfort with, we're getting to know somebody here. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You think about the people that you enjoy being around, it's because they're more vulnerable. And I think right now, we always like to say the great traits of a leader are humility and integrity. And I would add that right now, vulnerability is a big part of that as well. Having a vulnerability that lets us be open with people seeing who we truly are, more of an authenticity, that helps us connect with people and extend conversations versus trying to be perfect and build those walls. So, if you find yourself struggling with some of those awkward silences, awkward pauses, and you really want to become better at extending those conversations, I'd encourage you to think about how you actively listen. We prove we're listening with eye contact, right? We prove that we're listening when we're able to nod our head. And it's funny when you're across the table from somebody and you look at them and you're making eye contact and you nod your head, you encourage them to keep sharing, right? Another great piece of that is taking notes. I think when we take notes, people think that there's this like unconscious sharing there, that what they're sharing with us is important enough for us to document it. So they give us more and more. So prove that you're an active listener by making that great eye contact, by nodding your head, by asking, confirming, and clarifying questions. When somebody shares something with you, it's better for you to say, well, that's interesting, and not being afraid to interrupt, because too often we'll be afraid of interrupting somebody and not asking that question in the moment. And by the time they're done sharing that thought, or by the time we get to the end of our time together, whatever that question was we had that was valuable is usually lost. So, let's prove that we're listening. And for any of you who are in some type of sales role or business development role, the things you want to be listening for are budget. When people are talking about financial implications, money they have to spend, or financial implications for what they're hoping for from your solution, we want to be listening for authority. In other words, what's their role in the decision process? We care more about decision processes than we care about decision makers. I think a lot of people give sales a bad name because they want you to ask questions of people like, are you the decision maker? Is there anyone else that should be in the room? These are all things we call 0 to 0 questions, right? So when I ask somebody, are you the decision maker? It makes them either pretend that they are and be a hero and over-represent, or it forces them to feel like they're nobody and nothing if they have to say no. What's much more important for us is to understand is what the decision process looks like. So if I were to say, hey, Patrick, when I come back next Thursday and we have that proposal and I bring back my other team members, if things were to look good, what would happen next? Can you walk me through the process? And then you become more of a partner to somebody, right? And they become more inclusive of you in that decision and that information share. Need, we always want to understand why now, why us, what's the need that's driving this, and then timeline. I think if you're working with somebody or your people that report to you are working with somebody and they can't articulate these 4 things, the financial implications or the budget, the authority of who makes that decision, the need, which is why us, why now, and a timeline about when they have to get this done, you probably don't have a real opportunity. I was working with one of our clients the other day and I asked somebody, we're on a sales team call, and this one gentleman told me, hey, we have a new prospect. Yeah, I have this new client. He asked me for quotes on all these different hoses. And I said, why now? Like, why do you think he wants, what's happened in their business? He goes, I don't know. I think they just want to change. I said, oh, no. Like, nobody's ever looking to just change. especially when it's around suppliers, vendors, and, you know, changing things inside of our financials. I said, no, no, no. I said, you did something really good here. Don't say it's just because it's changed. Figure out what we did well. So we were able to dive a little deeper on that. But these are the types of things that we want to be listening for. And if you're not in a business development role, you know, you want to be listening for some of the emotion of what's important to somebody, so that we can still drive with clarifying questions about what good outcomes look like, right? And you know, remember, when we're asking the right questions and actively listening, we can eliminate all the need for guessing, because it's much better for us to know than just think we know. And too often when we get caught up in this assumption, when we start thinking, oh, I think that they want to do this, much like my friend the other day who said, well, you know, I think they're just ready for a change, we go down the wrong path. So be a little more direct, be a little more clear, and don't be afraid to ask somebody, you know, what's changed? What's going on in your business? How can we help? You know, what brought us to today? These are all questions that people are very willing, I think, to share answers with us. And it's our job to just be a little open, a little vulnerable, and ready to ask. And I think if we ask with the right tone and the right body language, and by the way, smiling and having an open, warm face, which, you know, my wife always teases me that I have this permanently furrowed eyebrow that you all see, which I guess doesn't invite too much sharing. Be mindful of that, you know, especially when we're on video. We get to see ourselves a lot more now. So if we know that we have that face that doesn't invite sharing, we might need to be mindful of that and change it. So trying to be respectful of time. I think we're coming up here near the end. We have about 5 minutes left before everybody has to jump. Any thoughts, feedback, comments, any situations you guys are dealing with that we can help dig into? Or does anybody have one thing that you're taking away from today that you'd like to share with the group? Patrick, you have one thing you're taking away from today that you'd like to share with the group?
Sorry, I'm on mute again.
There you go. It's easy for me to pick on you.
Yeah, no, I get it. You know, it's interesting because, you know, when you gave similar talk to us a few months ago, you know, the thing that I've been trying to be very intentional about since that conversation is just being thoughtful about trying to understand people's unique situations. How do you ask good questions about what's going on with them personally? Use this as a time to deepen the personal end of the relationship. The business is still important, but how am I using this time in this different way of connecting with them to kind of show that I genuinely care and want to know what's going on with them. So that's something I've taken away. I've been very intentional trying to do that with everybody I'm interacting with. Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate that. Thanks for sharing. We had also something else come in on chat, and it was from Andrew, who asked of us. He said, is there any time management tips from parents that have kids at home and hectic work, et cetera, and how they might want to manage through these days better to get through this period? I don't know. Does anybody have any unique time management approaches to having kids at home and managing those schedules? I think one of the things that is valuable for us, you know, I always say the best parenting advice I ever received was, you have to parent the child you have, not the one you want or the one you were. And for me, that was like mind blowing, because, you know, I remember my son Dante, who was probably like 6 at the time, would go to a party or a picnic, and, you know, the poor kid would go and have his second or third pop of the day and his third cookie. And I'd be like, what's wrong with you? You have no self-control. And it was because I was fast forwarding to all the mistakes I made at 18, 19, and 20, because I lacked self-control, right? And he didn't need that. All he wanted was another Dr. Pepper. So it's very similar, you know, when we lay that out now. I think that when we're around our kids so much in this home setting, we could see the traits in them that we know come from us or that we also possess that are frustrating. The things that we wish we had better time management skills, or we wish we weren't as so good at procrastinating, or whatever it might be. So I think the first thing is to remember to parent the child we have, not the one we want, which is like perfection, or the ones we were, so that we start digging out all of their uniqueness, all of those tendencies we have that we wish we didn't have, that we start projecting them. That also is great advice for us as leaders, because one of the things we learned over the years is that leaders tend to manage the people. They don't tend to manage the people they have. They manage the people they want, which is elevating them that to what the perfect employee would be, or they tend to manage the ones they were and say, oh, well, I didn't need that, and I didn't need that, and when I was in that role, I was able to do this. Well, they're not you, right? So how do we connect with our people during these times and understand some of their special circumstances? If it is that we have people on our team that have people at home, young people at home, or other spouses at home, and as a result, they might not be able to respond as quickly as we want. How do we start to lay out those expectations? So I think part of that, Andrew, is having clear expectations for our kids, what we expect of them and what they should expect of us, and then being able to share our expectations with our colleagues, both up and those that are on our team.
Yeah, I second that, Bill. And I think right along with that is not expecting perfection, which probably gets us in trouble as professionals and parents anyway. But especially now, having that flexibility and just a bit of grace for all of us, that it's not going to be perfect. My kids are at home right now too for the week, and if they miss a little bit, it's okay. If I miss a little bit, it's okay. If we're all in pajama pants, it's okay. We're not
I always say,
for perfection. We're striving to make it.
Right. Here we are. No one on this call has asked anybody else, what did you get in sixth grade math class? And you're saying, so at some point, this isn't going to be as important as we think it is, but it's more, I think right now, managing towards some mental health and sanity and, normalcy, and sharing with them what they can expect from us, and let them know what we expect from them. And it's not always demanding, it's a clear path. And I think as a leader, it's the same way. It's not just as a parent. As a leader, the more we can articulate and put on paper what we expect of our teams, the better it is for them and the better for us. I always like to share with leaders that, we all have expectations written on our heart. Very rarely are they on paper, and even more rarely do they end up being reviewed. So what if we were able to put our expectations of those that are on our team on paper, and then review them regularly, be it in a weekly or a monthly one-to-one, with some good feedback, and it doesn't have to be critique. We like to use red and green on those documents, by the way, so that when things are red, we can give honest upward guidance on, hey, right now we're struggling with this, but if we were to do this, this, and this, I think we could get there. And it becomes an easier way to coach. So, all right. So Bethany is our fearless leader today. Any other questions or anything we should be aware of before we let all these good people go back to their requirements and responsibilities at 2:00?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you so much for this presentation. I couldn't agree more with having cameras on, active listening. That visual connection is so important. I really did like the point of getting some insights into people's home and personalities. And I'm not in front of my fridge, but I am in front of my liquor cabinet. So it made me think that I bet you can really learn a lot about a sneak peek into people's liquor cabinets too. So that
some of us could almost interpret that as an invitation to come over and see what's in there.
You should. We've got a very, very welcoming environment here, and big enough to be distanced.
That's right.
But I want to thank everybody for attending today. A survey link will be emailed to you following the program, along with a link to the FCL Spotlight. Your feedback is greatly appreciated. It helps us improve on our future programs, and recognizing colleagues and people within your firm in that 40 and under group is really important too, and helps with networking and recognition. So thanks, everybody. And on behalf of the ACG Pittsburgh chapter, have a great and safe holiday season. Enjoy the rest of
Happy
your day.
Thanksgiving, everybody.